Again, everyone, Bob Burg here with another episode of Go Giver Influencers. So great to have you with us. Hey, I don't think it's a surprise to any of us that we can learn a lot from animals. We hear it all the time. There's books been written on it, certainly articles on it, and it goes without saying that from dogs we learn absolute loyalty and love, and there's so many different things. In fact, to prepare for this, I went online just to see if I could find any articles on this, and yeah, lots of articles on this. And one of them right away was an article titled 10 Important Life Lessons We Can Learn from Animals by Katie Good. The lessons included, and of course she goes a little bit into detail on these, but compassion, patience, how to live in the now, we're all connected, humans aren't as different as we thought, respect your elders, responsibility, listen carefully, live lightly. I real that was a real interesting one. That surprised me. We must stick together. Lots of great things. So great article. Check it out. Shannon is put the link on there. So after this show, go and check that out and read it if you'd like. When I think of a great lesson that I learned from one of my pets, this was actually from a pet who wasn't really my pet yet. Years ago, there was a stray cat. I've talked about her quite a bit. She even makes her way into John David Mann's and my last book, The Go-Giver Influencer. This was Liberty, the cat. And Liberty, before she really trusted me and would come into the house and everything, she used to come into the patio. And what I would do is I would leave the patio door open so she could get in when she needed to. And what she would do, aside from when she wanted to be fed, is whenever there was a rainstorm, which in Florida is, that's what we get plenty of rainstorms mid-afternoon. And so what she would usually do, there'd be a rainstorm. I'd look outside on the patio. She would all of a sudden magically show up and be there. So that was her refuge. So one day there was a rainstorm. I was in the other room and I walk into where I could see the patio door outside, and I walk in at just the right moment to experience a great lesson. The door was closed. It either blew closed or maybe I just forgot to open it. I don't know. But Liberty was there to try to get inside. And she tried for a second and eventually, within a second or so, came to the realization that the door was closed. She had no way to get in. And again, this all happened in like a few seconds time. I hadn't gotten out there yet to open the door. And what I saw her do was this. Well, here's what she didn't do. She didn't sit there complaining about not being able to get in. Okay. She didn't ruminate on it and look like all she was thinking of was how unfair life is. What she did is the moment she tried it first, but the moment she knew she couldn't get in, she walked over and found a bush that she could get under for shelter. Now, obviously, as soon as I saw this, I ran out there and I opened the door. She came right in. That was fine. But it was really interesting what she did. She didn't allow herself to stay in victimhood. Okay. Now, this is not, if you think the lesson is don't be a victim. No, it's not that, because there are victims. I mean, lousy things happen in life. They're beyond our control. We don't deserve them to happen, but they happen. We can be victims sometimes. The lesson, though, is what are you going to do with that? Are you going to stay in victimhood and just complain about how bad things are and how life is unfair and get soaked in the rain? Or are you going to say, okay, this stinks, it's unfair, I'm going to find a bush and get some shelter? And, I tend to be a person who, by my nature, I'm kind of a complainer. Okay. I've worked myself out of that being, a dominant part of me, but it's my nature and I can fall into that sometimes. And at that time, I was sort of getting angry at things and just, I can't believe this person's doing this or that person's doing that, or this client is this and that. And I was complaining about it a lot, not doing anything about it. And what I learned from her is stop doing that, because people are going to say and do what I would consider stupid things, just if I can use that word. Clients are going to be difficult. And, it happens. We can acknowledge it, but then we need to live in the solution. And that was a wonderful lesson. Now, so I learned lessons from my four-legged friends, my furry friends, but I also learn from my human friends And I am extremely fortunate to be great friends with really one of the top leaders and mentors today. And I consider her one of my mentors. And I want to introduce you to her. Her name's Dondi Scumaci. Dondi is one of the top mentors in the world on leadership, influence, and team building. She's retained by some of the biggest companies in the world, including companies in Canada, Europe, the United Kingdom, Australia, Africa, South America, to weave her speaking and mentoring magic. Her client list reads like a who's who of Fortune 100 companies. Her books include Designed for Success, Ready, Set, Grow, and The Amazing Career Moves, a combination business parable and how-to book. All her books are fantastic. And the digital version of her acclaimed program, Mentor in a Box, is available. You can find everything Dondi at dondiscumaci.com. Throughout the show, Shannon will be listing her various URLs in the discussion guide. But here's something else. If you have questions for Dondi, you literally, not figuratively, literally have one of the world's top mentors here for the next 30 minutes or so. So take advantage of that and ask questions, and I'll be doing my best to multitask, which you all know I don't do very well, but I just purposely asked, okay, Dondi, let me take a minute and look at the discussion guide to see who is saying what. So first, welcome, my friend.
Thank you for having me. What a beautiful introduction. I've been very excited about this discussion we're having today. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Now, I want to begin by talking about a magnificent beast, an angel clothed in fur, if you will. His name is Sir Fortunato. And of course, this episode is Influential Fortunato. So let's talk about him. He may not be related to the 1960s famous wisdom-filled talking horse, Mr. Ed, but you have shared a lot with me that he has a lot of wisdom to share. And he's become really one of your teachers. How quickly after you adopted him did you see this kind of relationship developing? Were you learning right away from him?
I was, and you know what was really fascinating is that it was sort of the perfect storm. I think people who were watching us were a little horrified because I was a brand new writer, and he was completely green, and that is a little bit of a dangerous combo. We didn't have any idea what we were doing, and it was pretty obvious to the people around us. Unfortunately, we asked for some help, and we got some great help, some great training. But I think one of the first things I learned from him, or when I knew he was going to be my teacher, is that when his trainer rides him, there's a lot of horse in there. I mean, there's a lot of horse in there. He's very powerful. But then when I would get on, you could just feel him dialing it down. And at first, if I even lost my balance a little bit because I had none, he would just stop. He would completely stop. And then came the day when I was getting a little better and a little more confident that he didn't stop. And the instructor said, he knows you're ready for more. He's not going to babysit you. He's not going to take care of you more than you need him to, because he senses where you are, but he's trying to push you into a new arena. And that was a wonderful moment for me when I realized that he was sensing it's time for us to go a little bigger.
As a leader, do teams do that with their leader? Or does that not?
I think we need to pay more attention. That's one of the reasons I'm so grateful for him. I was just in Chicago talking about this very thing. Do we recognize the teachable moments in real time, the hallway, drive-by, drop-by moment? Are we paying attention to the signals? And that's one of the things I'm learning from him, is he is so aware of everything. He is so aware of the environment and every sound and every sight. He is just paying attention, and then he is very organically responding to that. And I think that I do see leaders that do that. I aspire to do that better, to really be paying such attention that I can sense changes in the environment and I can respond to it in that moment.
How do we do that then? How do we retrain ourselves to do that? It must start with consciousness, I guess, but is there any kind of way we can go about it?
I think there is a tactic. Like, I think that to some degree, our lives are sort of determined. The quality is determined by the kinds of questions that we ask. And so, one of the things that I tell leaders is, are you asking bigger, better questions? So, our brains are pretty fascinating. We've all probably had the experience where if you couldn't remember the name of a song or a book or a person or a movie, and you were struggling to remember it and you couldn't, and then you're in a shower and suddenly it pops into your mind, right? We've all had that moment where we remember. What happened there is the reticular activating system in your brain continued to work on that problem, solving for that question, even when you weren't consciously thinking about it. Or if you think about, we've all had probably the occasion where we buy a car and then we notice all the cars just like our car. So suddenly we're paying attention. So the tactic that I often give to leaders is to say, ask the big question. What am I going to look for in the environment that will tell me something is shifting? What are the cues or the signs? What will I listen for? What will I see? What will I hear? What will I notice that tells me this is one of those moments I need to pull over and I need to pay attention? And if we start to scan the environment with intention, we'll start, the brain will do its job. We'll start to notice things we weren't noticing before.
I love that. Look for the signals. Decide in advance, what are you going to look for that is cluing you in that there's a lesson here?
Mm-hmm. For Fortunato, it's at first, when I would first hop on, I was so nervous and so I was scared. I'm just going to say it out loud. I was scared. And if I shifted to the right or to the left, and it was really interesting too, because there were a few times where I would be losing my balance and you could actually kind of see him in the mirror, kind of hoisting me back over the other way, like, get over there, but he was paying attention to my balance. And I think that that's a really interesting takeaway too. As leaders, we can step back and are we noticing when people are losing their balance? And what does that look like in the workplace? And how do we help them to rebalance? Looking for some of those signals or those signs. And you're right, determining in advance, what am I looking for that will tell me I need to respond?
And I guess even in social situations with friends or with family members, and of course, we always have to be tactful when we do it. But I guess if we see someone getting a little off balance too, we can sort of look for those clues. And
you said something recently. You were quoting someone, and I thought it was a lovely quote. It was the human response to vulnerability is empathy. And so if we can, maybe one of those signals is when we see someone in that vulnerable moment. And then what do we do with that? How do we acknowledge that in that moment? How do we just demonstrate, I see you, I understand, and it's okay. I think that there is a connection there with that vulnerability and the empathy.
I love that. Mike Robbins on a recent podcast. Mike Robbins, who wrote the book "Bring Your Whole Self to Work." Talked about that. He's phenomenal. We're gonna.
I have that in my queue now.
Yeah,
I've actually purchased it. It's on my tablet, and I think it's next.
Dondi, I want to read something here because this was one of the articles on your blog, and make sure you check out Dondi's blog. She doesn't blog a whole lot, but when she does, it's always something very powerful. And this was part of what you call the Fortunato Files. Wonderful name for it. The article was Develop Your Leadership Core. And you were you were trying to navigate or negotiate with Fortunato, and you heard your instructor's voice in your head saying, find your structure. What does that mean?
It means that he games me. So in one of my lessons, she stopped me because he would drop his right shoulder and swing his left hip, and sometimes he would pretend to trip. I mean, he's gaming me. and getting away with a lot of stuff. And I would always say he does things when I'm on him that he doesn't do when you're on him. And she said, because you're allowing that, right? You're reacting to every single thing that he does, and he's got lots of material. So this is a game to him. And so if you're going to put your right leg on, then he's going to throw, he's going to swing to the, to the left and slide over. We look drunk. I mean, when we get on him, she gets on him, it looks pretty fancy. When I get on him, we look drunk. We're kind of weaving and wobbling around. And so she said, what I want you to do is stop reacting to everything that he does, right? Because he's playing a game with you, and he's, by the way, winning the game. I want you to find your core. I want you to find your structure. And in dressage, that simply means that you've engaged your core abs, and your shoulders are relaxed, and your seat is, you're really riding with your seat bones, right? So you look very still. And when they call it an independent seat, it means that your legs are moving without your hips, and your upper body moving. So there's this structure that you create that is very, very firm, but yet relaxed. It's kind of it's a paradox. And she said, I don't want you to react to everything he's doing. I want you to find your structure, and you hold your structure, and that will invite him to come back into balance, because he's throwing you out of balance. So I want you to stay balanced even when he's not. And I thought, isn't that so interesting that if we can find our leadership core, our human core, our parenting core, our sibling core, right? Whatever relationship in our lives, if we can find our core, we stop reacting to all of the things that are happening around us, or in the case of riding a horse, beneath us, right? And we are steady and we are stable regardless. And not just that we're steady and stable, we're actually inviting others then to rebalance and to come into line. And it was amazing when I started to do that, how he just all of a sudden he was just balanced, and I actually could experience what it was, his capability. And that's, I think, another thing from a leadership perspective. If we can find our leadership core, then we invite people to come into that structure, and we will see what they are capable of, right? So your leadership core is really, what are the decisions that you need to make? What are the disciplines that you're going to commit to? What are the skills that you're going to work on, right? The competencies that you're going to build. And all of those become your leadership core. Decisions, disciplines, skills, and I would probably add to that the behaviors that you are going to demonstrate. And as you start to focus more on building that core, you're inviting all of the people around you to come into the alignment of that effectiveness, right? And you then get to see what they're truly capable of. It's amazing how it works. It's that you're influencing the environment by creating your own structure.
Okay, and we have more to go. I just want to take a quick moment, though, to just suggest that after the show, people check you out at dondiscumaci.com. Shannon, who does just such a wonderful job with this and on the discussion board and getting everything together. She's been putting your URLs in there, the various URLs. Also, your books. Career Moves is my favorite. I just thought that was such an amazing book. But your other ones are too. You don't happen to have a copy of any of those books right in front of you at the side that you can hold up? Because I don't. I have them in the other room and I didn't bring them over. I'm so sorry. So check out her page. All of Dondi's pages, the resources. We just had the same page which goes to your resources. So Shannon, I know, has been putting those in there as well. And then you have that great product, the Mentor in a Box. And
the first chapter of Career Moves on my website is downloadable for free.
Oh, so good.
People can just go to the website and click on the download, and you can get a taste for Career Moves and see if it's something that you'd like to read all the way through.
And you will. It's a fantastic story. Now, Todd Moore, who he's a CEO, entrepreneur, inventor. He's a great guy. He asks, where does a person, an inventor, a CEO, go of a product for 10 years, because that's how long he's been doing that, go to get refreshed, renewed, recharged, creativity for a new idea? Perfect question for you, because this is when they bring you in. to help people
Yeah.
do this?
Yeah, I get that a lot. I do a fair amount of executive coaching, and it really is because of that question. Where do the top level leaders go, right? Because they're giving and giving and giving, and where do they then fill back up and refresh? I think we should all have a mentor. I think we should all have a coach. I think we should be mentors and we should have mentors. But in addition to that, what I'm finding is getting plugged into a mastermind, right? Where you're with a group of your peers and bringing real cases to the table. Here are some things that I'm wondering about or struggling with or thinking about, and getting some feedback and some energy around that. I think we have to network more intentionally at that level. I think networking is always really important, but because leaders at that level are pouring themselves out, right? They've got to be very intentionally then taking something in, what we read, the community that we build, the associations that we make. But I do think all of us need a mentor. I think we have to have people that we can go to, and we can then demonstrate our own vulnerability. And here's something else, and this might sound really maybe even counterintuitive. I think it's, are you willing to be brand new at something? So, at my age, hopping onto a very green horse, was a recipe for disaster, and really scary. And people say, why did you want to do that? Well, I've always loved horses my whole life, and my family. I come from a family of ranchers and all of that, but I wasn't riding my whole life. I wanted to do something that took my breath away again. I wanted to do something that asked me to be brave, and I wanted to do something that I wasn't good at, that I had to be brand new. Being new at something, and then there's all when you're brand new at something, you see it with brand new eyes, and that in itself is kind of a refreshing process. So
I want to.
Place.
Huh?
Put yourself in a vulnerable place.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I see successful leaders doing this all the time, always learning something new, being able to, it almost creates the context for having to have a beginner's mind, in some way all the time. There was a great story you told me. In fact, we didn't even talk about this, but I just remember it from so long ago. It was just such a delightful story. I think it was pretty soon after you got Fortunato, and there was a moment where, and correct me if I may have had the facts kind of wrong on this, but he put his head on your shoulder and you kind of nestled against your face, and you thought it was a bonding moment. And the trainer said, no, that was a manipulative moment or something like that. Tell us about that.
Oh, well, when he would when I would be tacking him up, I would be putting his bridle on, and he would, every single time, he would put his head on my shoulder and he would pull me in, and he would kind of press down. There was some force to it, and I thought this was a lovely hug. I thought he was holding me, right? And one day my trainer was there, and she said, "That's not a hug. That's a shove, right? He's telling you in this moment that he's in charge, and you're laughing." And that probably goes with stories of when he knocked me off of a mounting block, or so. He does test me. So that's another one of the lessons: is every time we ride, every time we walk out to the mounting block, there's a moment there where he asks me every single time, "Who's in charge? Wow. Who's in charge?" And if I don't answer the question, then he's more than happy to be a leader. And that's what's really interesting about horses. And I think when you were talking at the very top of our time, the lessons we learned from animals, I was laughing about the one we should have to stick together, because I've heard that's why dogs follow us to the bathroom, right? We have to stick together in all things. But but when you think about horses, for example, they're herd animals. And there's always going to be a leader. And if there's a leadership vacuum, a member of the herd will be compelled to step up and fill the vacuum. And I think that happens in organizations all the time, right? And it's where when there's not leadership happening, then people will that vacuum will be filled with leadership, and it might not be the kind of leadership that you're looking for.
let's talk about helping those you lead get to the next level, and what it takes to do that. I loved the following statement in your post. Are you ready to go bigger, maybe even fly? You said
Mm.
if you wanted to do that, you needed to sit back, relax, and get out of Fortunato's way, because your tension constricts his movement, blocks
Mm.
his energy. Is this a typical leadership mistake in today's companies, big or small?
I think it is. I mean, so the situation is that we were getting ready to do a bigger gate, and I was afraid. It's the canter, right? And it's big, and he's very powerful, and every time I would be ready to ask for the canter, I would be asking for the canter with my voice, but my whole body would be saying, "Please don't canter." And my trainer said to me, "You're going to have to do something very counterintuitive here. You are going to have to sit back and relax and breathe and let him carry you." And that means that you are not going to be holding on tight. You're going to have to let go and relax your body. You're literally getting in his way. You're asking him to do something that he physically cannot do because you're constricting the energy. And it was the most amazing moment when I finally just decided, there's that decision, right? I'm going to sit back, and whatever happens, I'm going to just enjoy this moment because it's pretty cool. And it was the most exhilarating thing I have ever experienced in my life as he took off into that canter, and then just breathe through that. And I think that the leadership connection is that sometimes I think leaders hold on so tight because we feel such responsibility for the outcome and the weight of that. And so we want to delegate, and we want people to run with their tasks and their projects and their responsibilities. But in what ways are we then clutching and holding on too tightly to where we're restricting the energy? And we may be saying with our voices, "Go for it, this is yours," but are we sending other signals that counteract that, by the tension, right, or by our involvement, or by how closely we're holding on to things?
Dondi, we influence a lot of times without even knowing it, don't we?
I think so. I think we really do. I had a tough week last week. I mean, an incredibly strenuous, robust week with a surgery with my mom, and there was just a lot of travel, and there was just back-to-back appointments and a lot of deadlines. And I got through all of that, and it was Friday. Friday morning is my riding lesson, right? And I have to really fight to protect that time, and I did fight to protect that time. But it came to the lesson emotionally, mentally, just physically exhausted. And I was actually a little shaky. I felt anxious more, I haven't felt that kind of anxiety for a long time when I go to ride. And when I got on to him, he was being a complete jerk. I mean, he was just being a jerk. And, he was even crow hopping a little bit. I mean, he was kind of being ornery. And my trainer stopped the whole thing, and she said, "Here's the thing. It's not him, it's you." He is you. You are so tense, and you're holding on so tight. Your body is like, in a ball, and he's picking up on all of that tension. And so she said, today's lesson, and I think that this was so powerful. She said, today's lesson isn't going to be about, can we canter? Can we do something fancy? Today's lesson is, can you learn how to relax when you're not? Can you let the tension go? Can you release the pressure? Can you sit back and can you breathe even when you're feeling completely knotted up inside? And it literally took an hour for me to finally sit back. And then all of a sudden, magically, my horse appeared, this wonderful athlete wanting to please. But he was completely responding to all of my tension and my fear and my anxiety and all of the noises in my head. He was reflecting me. And I think that that's a really important thing for leaders too, is to realize our people reflect us. So when we look out at our teams or our projects or the results, those are reflections of our leadership and how we're showing up. And it was an interesting moment when she said, because here he was being bad, he was being a bad boy, and she said, but it's not him, it's you. And if you relax, he will relax and he'll go to work. And I thought it was interesting too, because he was easily distracted. That was another very interesting moment for me. He was very easily distracted by anything going on around him. He's very social anyway. But I remember this man walked into the arena with these two young girls, and that apparently they're interested in horses and maybe interested in some horse riding lessons. And they walked into, and they were sitting on the bleachers, and he just made a beeline for these little girls. I mean, he wasn't listening to me at all. So I also think that when we are like that as leaders, our people are going to be very easily distracted by any bright, shiny thing. Right? They're going to be pulled off of the mission and maybe even out of balance a bit.
Dondi, as always, in a 30-minute conversation with you, I received so many gems of wisdom, and I know everyone feels the same way. This was wonderful. I think that last story, though, was one of the ultimate lessons on leadership I've ever heard. Thank you. So there's also some people with are giving thumbs up on the page. So that's very nice. Dondi Scumaci is a corporate speaker, coach, mentor, all-around wonderful human being, author of Career Moves and other great books. Check out everything Dondi Scumaci at dondiscumaci.com, her book, her blogs, her resources, especially Mentoring in a Box. Shannon's been posting those links in the discussion section. And before we end, of course, check out the Go Giver podcast at thegogiver.com/podcast. John David Mann's and my books, The Go Giver, in our latest one, The Go Giver Influencer, can be found at thegogiver.com. Scroll down, you can check out the books. Also, if you'd like to be a professional speaker, part-time or full-time, and are interested in something like that, check out gogiverspeaker.com. Of course, Shannon's posting this anyway, the link, so you'll be able to see that there. And our November live workshop, Go Giver Entrepreneurs Academy. We limit those to just 10 people. We get very deep and very specific in your business for 2 full days, plus a really nice event the night before. Check out that at gogiverentrepreneursacademy.com. Dondi, thank you, my friend. Again, just magnificent as always. My regards to Sir Fortunato and to your husband and your kids and your grandkids and all the 4-leggeds in the Scumaci household.
Thank you so much. It is always so energizing to be with you. We send our love from Texas. Thank you so much for the opportunity to have this chat.
Thank you. We will be back next Thursday with a brand new show. Until then, I'm Bob Burg, wishing you a great day and a terrific week. Bye-bye.